What's going on, guys? It's the Cess. Welcome to a different kind of video than you're used to seeing on this channel. I figured since it's Halloween, it decided it'd be a perfect time to branch out and try something new. Well, my logic for that is anyone's guess, really. Today we're going to talk about probably the one remaining thing that has the ability to truly and profoundly scare me, as well as many others. Creepypastas. For those who don't know, creepypastas are horror-themed stories and images that have been widely shared around the internet. There seems to be no limit to the amount of creativity and imagination the writers of these tales of murder, suicide, paranormal occurrences, and so much more have been able to come up with over the last number of years, as there have been literally millions created. In the spirit of Halloween, I've decided to put together a list of 10 of the scariest creepypastas that I've ever heard. Now, I have omitted a few of these ones, such as Slender Man, Jeff the Killer, Smile Dog, The Rake, a few others, because I feel as though their immense popularity has somewhat taken a bit of a luster off. With that being said, turn up the volume, turn out the lights, and strap yourselves in. My good friend Dani Elaine joins me in counting down the 10 scariest creepypastas of all time.
Number 10. The Bad Dream. A man is awoken in the middle of the night by his daughter, who tells him she just had a bad dream. When he asks her if she wants to climb into bed and tell him about it, she surprisingly says no. When he asks her why, the daughter replies, "Because in my dream, when I told you about it, the thing wearing mommy's skin sat up." Before the man can process what his daughter just said, the covers behind him begin to shift.
Number 9. I Saw It Coming. A man tells the story of the time he opened his door to a stranger late one night. He notices the stranger is badly injured and bleeding profusely, as he's barely able to mutter out the words, "Help me." The man, dumbfounded by the sight before him, runs to get his phone, but by the time he gets back, the stranger is gone. Shaken to his core by what he's just seen, the man proceeds to go back inside his house and drink himself to sleep. The stranger comes back to the man's house every night for a week, while the man, being driven insane by the sight in front of him, proceeds to drink himself into oblivion. On the 7th night, the man can't take it anymore, and on the first knock, he opens the door, aims his shotgun, and blows the stranger's head off. He drags the stranger's body to the backyard and buries it in a shallow grave. On the next night, the man awaits his visitor to return, and grows increasingly anxious when he fails to show. After what seems like an eternity, there's finally a knock at the door, and the man springs to answer it, only to see not the stranger, but a police officer standing in front of him. The officer tells him that a car had gone off the road the previous night, and if he had seen anything strange. The man says that he hasn't, and the officer thanks him and leaves. The man calls off of work the next day, digs up the body, and burns it to ashes. He then goes back inside his house and drinks himself to sleep once again.
Number 8. I Know You're Awake, also known as Masterpiece. This story tells of a young boy who is woken up in the middle of the night by the sound of screaming coming from the opposite side of his house. For some reason, he chooses to use the bathroom instead of going to investigate the noise. Upon leaving the bathroom, he notices a large bloodstain on the carpet and runs back to his room to hide under his covers. He peeks his head out for just a second, only to see his bedroom door open and witness his dead parents being dragged across the floor. The creature props up the bodies of the boy's father at the foot of his bed and his mother in a chair, and then manipulates them so that they're both focused on him, mouths wide open in a state of shock. It begins to rub its hands on the wall and then positions itself underneath the boy's bed. After several hours of lying motionless with the stomach-churning scent of blood in the air, the boy finally works up the courage to see the creature's masterpiece. Written on the wall in his parents' blood were the words, "I know you're awake."
Number 7. The Smiling Man. A man who has just moved into a new neighborhood decides to go for a walk one late Wednesday night. As he's headed back home, he happens upon a silhouette of a man standing underneath a streetlight, doing a perfect waltz. Figuring the person is just drunk, the man walks across the street to avoid him. He looks back only to see that the figure has stopped and is standing perfectly still underneath the streetlight, with a smile that appears to be larger than a human is capable of. The figure begins dancing once again away from the man, who by this point is completely unnerved, but continues on his way. After halfway down the block, the man hears rapid footsteps approaching him, only to turn around and see the figure running at him at full speed. The man books it until he's in a more populated area, then turns around only to see that the figure is now gone. He finally makes it home, but is so haunted by what he sees, he moves out a few weeks later. The YouTube channel Michael Evans made a short film based on this story. It's absolutely amazing, and if you'd like to watch it for yourself, the link is down in the description below.
Number 6. White with red. Late one night, a man checks into a hotel. When the woman at the desk gives him his key, she tells him he'll be passing a room with no number on the door and that no one was allowed in there. He promises not to and heads to his room and promptly falls asleep. However, the next night, his curiosity gets the best of him and he walks to the room. After trying the handle only to find it locked, the man decides to look through the keyhole. In the room oddly similar to his own, the man sees a pale woman facing away from the door, standing in a corner. Confused by this, the man returns to his room. On his way to check out of the hotel the next morning, he decides to look through the keyhole once again. This time, however, the only thing he can see is the color red, just a constant, unmoving shade of deep red. When he gets to the desk, the woman asks him if he looked through the keyhole. The man confesses that he had and asks the woman about the history of the room. She tells him that a long time ago, a man murdered his wife in that room, and whoever stays there gets very uncomfortable. But these people were not ordinary. They were white all over, except for their eyes, which were red.
Number 5. Marina Morta Glesgorf. There is a 20-second long video on YouTube entitled Marina Morta Glesgorf. It consists of a man staring intently at you for 18 seconds, followed by him grinning sinisterly for the last 2 seconds. It is believed to be only the shortened version of the full video, which is around 2 minutes long. That version was reportedly removed by YouTube after around 150 people were so disturbed by what they saw that they gouged out their eyes and committed suicide. Because of how much a big bubble-blowing baby I am, I absolutely refuse to go search for that version of it, so you're on your own. But I warn you, what you see may be the last thing you ever see.
Number 4. The SCP Foundation. According to their website, the SCP Foundation operates beyond jurisdiction, empowered and entrusted by every major national government with the task of containing anomalous objects, entities, and phenomena. SCP stands for Secure, Contain, Protect, which is the process that the Foundation uses to detain these anomalies. A few of which include SCP-173, a humanoid creature that will snap the neck of any person near it. However, SCP-173 can't move while it is in direct eye contact with a person, similar to that of the Weeping Angels from Doctor Who. SCP-049 gives the appearance of a plague doctor from the 16th century. It believes that the plague is still happening today and will kill any human it sees, perform surgery on their corpses using tools it pulls from its cloak, upon which the bodies will be reanimated into some sort of zombie-like creature. The plague doctor says he will do this to every human until the world is cured of the great pestilence. And finally, SCP-682, also known as the hard-to-destroy reptile. SCP-682 is believed to be highly intelligent and has voiced his hatred for all life. Due to its hostile nature, it is to be kept in steel-plated chamber, completely submerged in hydrochloric acid so it remains incapacitated. If you want to find out more about the SCPs listed or read the files on literally thousands more, the link to the Foundation's wiki page is in the description below.
Number 3. The Expressionless. In June of 1972, a woman walked into the waiting room of Cedars-Sinai Hospital in Los Angeles, wearing nothing but a white, blood-soaked gown. Her face resembled that of a mannequin's, with no eyebrows and smeared makeup. As patients fled the waiting room in terror, the woman walked up to the horrified nurse at the desk and promptly collapsed. As hospital staff awaited the arrival of police, they took the woman to a treatment room where they attempted to restrain and sedate her. She began to fight back with extreme force and had to be held down by 2 of the hospital staff. At one point, she turns to the male doctor in the room and smiles to reveal razor-sharp teeth. This causes the female doctor holding down the woman to fall backwards and scream. The male doctor stares for a moment and asks, "What the hell are you?" After what seems like an eternity, the woman lunges forward and sinks her teeth into the neck of a male doctor. The woman leans over the doctor and says, "I am God." The male doctor dies, watching the woman slaughter 2 security guards who attempt to stop her. The female doctor who survived the incident named the woman the Expressionless. There was never another sighting of her. The YouTube channel Totally Sketch made a great film adaptation of this, and the link to that as well is in the description below.
Number 2. The Russian Sleep Experiment. During the 1940s, the Russian government sealed 15 political prisoners of World War II in a giant chamber with the intent of using them as guinea pigs to test an experimental gas-based stimulant on them that would render them unable to sleep. The prisoners agreed to be a part of the experiment under the false pretenses that they would be freed if they could last 30 days in the chamber. The first 5 days were uneventful, except for the fact that the conversations between the prisoners became increasingly more dark and disturbing. Over the course of the next week, some prisoners began to whisper incoherently into the microphones in the chamber, while others began running up and down the length of the chamber, screaming for hours on end without ever stopping to take a breath. After 3 more days, complete silence came over the chamber, so quiet in fact that the researchers were left wondering whether or not they were working at all. They used the chamber's intercom system to try and provoke a response from the prisoners, saying they were opening the chamber to check the microphones and compliance would earn one of them their immediate freedom. After a few seconds, one of the prisoners responded by calmly saying, "We no longer wish to be freed." After a few seconds, one of the prisoners responded by calmly saying,
"We no longer wish to be freed."
On the 15th day, the researchers opened the chamber, flushed out the gas, and filled it with fresh air. This prompted the prisoners to start screaming and begging as if their life depended on it for the gas to be put back in the chamber. Armed soldiers then entered the chamber and were horrified at what they saw. Only 4 of the 5 test subjects were still alive but had portions of skin and muscle torn from their bodies. The food rations for the last 5 days had not been touched, and the one dead prisoner had been ripped apart and stuffed in the drain in the center of the chamber, allowing 4 inches of water to accumulate. The prisoners were forcibly removed from the chamber and moved to a medical facility. One accidentally had his spleen ruptured in the process and bled to death almost instantly. The second was given a gratuitous amount of an anesthetic and promptly flatlined. The third had removed his own internal organs and was taken into surgery to have them replaced. He was completely unaffected by the anesthetic given to him, and the presiding surgeon repeatedly stated that it was medically impossible for him to still be alive. It was only after he fell asleep did the prisoner's heart finally stop. The commander in charge of the experiment ordered that the last remaining prisoner be restrained, hooked up to an EEG machine, and placed back in the chamber with a soldier and a doctor. The doctor pulled the sidearm of the soldier and shot both the soldier and the commander to death. As the remaining members of the medical staff ran out of the facility, the doctor entered the room where the last remaining prisoner was and said,
"I won't be locked in here with these things. Not with you. What are you? I must know."
The prisoner smiled and said,
"Have you forgotten so easily? We are you. We are the madness that lurks within you all, begging to be free at every moment in your deepest animal mind. We are what you hide from in your beds every night. We are what you sedate into silence and paralysis when you go to nocturnal heaven where we cannot tread."
The doctor aimed at the prisoner's heart and fired. As the prisoner's EEG flatlined, he managed to mutter the words,
"So nearly free."
And the number 1 scariest creepypasta of all time, abandoned by Disney. After a failed $30 million construction project, Disney abandoned their plans for a resort called Treasure Island in the Bahamas. The writer of the story doesn't believe the official reports, so he decides to go investigate for himself. He wanders around for several hours until he comes across a large metal door with a padlock with a sign that says, "Mascots Only." He enters the dimly lit room, only to see a photo-negative Mickey Mouse costume lying prone on a table. As he goes to take a picture of this anomaly, the costume rises up and stands before him. Frozen in place in a state of shock, the writer can only watch as the Mickey Mouse costume slowly makes his way over to him. In a hushed, perverted tone, the Mickey Mouse costume says,
"Hey, want to see my head come off?"
to which it violently started to tear at its own neck, releasing a stream of thick, chunky, yellow blood. The man is finally able to turn and run from the horrific sight in front of him, but not before seeing the words, "Abandoned by God," clawed into the door. And that was our list. If you enjoyed, please hit that like button and subscribe if you have not done so already to be notified whenever I post a new video. And if you should happen to have some friends who have an interest in the macabre, or you just feel like sharing the show with someone, feel free to share this video on Facebook and Twitter. Let me know down in the comment section below if you feel I missed any out, or I just missed your favorite. And maybe there'll be a part 2 to this someday. Special thanks to Dani Elaine for being a part of this video. Links to her social media will be down in the description, along with the links to all of the stories if you'd like to read them for yourselves. And I want to thank you all so much for watching, and have a safe and spooky Halloween.